Hello everyone, PK Entertainment back again. Hope you're all doing well. And we're just going to continue now just the ongoing coverage of the major Super Bowl TV spots for the up and coming movies coming out. And I'm going to talk about now the James Bond installment, or the most up and coming installment, No Time to Die. And to be fair, the TV spot itself, it didn't really show us anything more that we didn't see in the original trailer itself. And just on a few thoughts now, I mean, I thought the trailer looked really sort of well action packed, typical sort of more realistic to an extent, sort of very brutal, sort of hard hitting stunts. Daniel Craig still looks the part. We all know this is his last adventure, I believe, unless this one makes a billion and beyond and they throw him even more money than what they pay him normally. I believe Spectre was meant to be the last Daniel Craig movie. If you look at the way Spectre ended, it pretty much gave that impression. So he's returned for one more on itself. So no, I really liked it. The villain, um, I believe, is called Safin. It's played by Rami Malek, who of course won the Best Actor Oscar for playing Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. He's that typical, what I would say, modern day villain. Not too similar from what the Javier Bardem villain was in Skyfall. Very sort of physically mutilated, looks very haunted, very disturbed. They try this now. This modern day villain is kind of really sort of sinister, sort of darker, much more hidden villain, if you like. Not very physically imposing, but obviously he's going to have far-reaching influence. It looks, yeah, he looks like he's going to be a pretty good stand-up villain so far. We see that this is the, if you like, continuation of what you would call a three-story arc, a kind of trilogy of the Daniel Craig films, where we started off with Skyfall, where we had sort of hints of him as an orphan, his backstory, and how Blofeld later on in Spectre, the main motivation was, I believe, if I'm correct in this, that Blofeld's parents took in James Bond, and Blofeld got ignored while James Bond got more of the attention. That's why Blofeld was basically setting up this elaborate scheme to kidnap James Bond. And then at the end of Spectre, James Bond walked off with, I believe her name was Madeline Swan, the character. And now when we see her coming back, apparently she's got some big dark secret that she's been keeping from James Bond, and the MI6 are looking to get James Bond back in the fold. And he's not sure of what's going on. You have that scene in the other trailer where he goes to the desk and, what's your name, James Bond? It's as if you don't know who you are. You're kind of out of the loop now. And so it's a sort of an ongoing continuation of that, which could be interesting itself. In general, the James Bond movies are normally standalone adventures. That's probably why they lasted so long, right? There was never any ongoing story arc or continuing sort of story arc throughout. But No Time to Die is kind of like the conclusion of what we saw in the beginning of Skyfall and then throughout Inspector. So we'll see how that goes on. Of course, the big talking point was Natasha Lynch as the replacement for 007, if you like. Had this all. We saw this all debate about, should James Bond be a female, the female equivalent? Is it just a token, or is it a genuine move to sort of change the franchise? I'll probably do a separate video, but for me, I've never agreed with that. James Bond is James Bond. This theory that, oh, if we give the 007, it's just a number, it doesn't matter who you pass it to, it's just the title of the agent. Like, no, 007, what's the first thing you think of when you think of 007, right? You think of James Bond, the male, white Caucasian James Bond, right? I've always said, if you're going to do a female version, have it be her own character, where she could star in the James Bond movie as another agent, and then if the audiences really take to her, she can spin off into her own adventure. You shouldn't just replace James Bond just for the sake of it, just to make her female, just for what? So you're just trying to promote representation or diversity. Don't fall with the original, concept, the original version. Have her be her own character and stand on her own. I'll probably do an extended video on that, but that's my initial thought on it. But in the trailer itself, Natasha Lynch, she looked fine. She looked fine in the role. She's, pretty much looked like she can handle herself. She gives, there's lots of verbal sparring between her and James Bond. That's to be expected. It's pretty much, she looks like that feisty, sort of capable, female agent, which, they want to present her as. And like I said, if she spins off into her own movie, no problem with that at all. And we see Ralph Fiennes coming back as M, and Jeffrey Wright as James Bond's sort of faithful companion, Felix, in the role. So it's pretty much, looks visually very appealing. It's going to be, like I said, very exciting, action packed. We're going to get a conclusion to the ongoing story thread begun in Skyfall, and for a James Bond movie, we can't really say anything more than that. Presumably Daniel Craig's last movie. I personally, after this film, want to see a sort of revision back to what I think James Bond should be more interpreted as, is this kind of more globetrotting, charismatic, suave super agent. I understand that Daniel Craig was right for this current time that we're in, where we want our heroes to be sort of more flawed, more vulnerable, and they're not really up for the task. They're sort of reluctant anti-heroes. I get all that. That's all been done for years and years now. But for me, I've never seen James Bond as that. James Bond is always that hero who embraces his role. He loves being a super agent. The cars, the gadgets, sleeping with all the women, the vodka martinis, the sharp suits, the charisma, the bravado, the confidence. To me, that's James Bond. And after this movie, which will close off, the Daniel Craig sort of era, I would like them to see, a much more charismatic version of the character. My two favourites ultimately were Sean Connery and Roger Moore, so a mixture between those two would be great. I did like Pierce Brosnan a lot, and I actually think Timothy Dalton's version was really underrated. I actually think something closer to that interpretation, because he was much more of a grittier, sort of more punishing version, but he still had the look of Bond, and he still had that sort of dry wit and that dry humour, and I think that version of, would actually work well in today's current climate. So if not for Sean Connery or Roger Moore, I know that gets criticism a lot, but I loved Roger Moore. That was the one really that I sort of grew up with more in the sort of early mid-80s, and then Timothy Dalton carried on, and then Pierce Brosnan picked up the mantle after that. But I just hope after this movie we can get back to a more much more appealing, much more if you like, inspirational or aspirational version of James Bond. It's the same issues we've had with Superman or Luke Skywalker. These are classic characters where you watch them on the screen, you want to be them, you want to do the things that they do, right? So when we get these current versions, when they're very downbeat and very pessimistic, they don't want to basically save the world. They don't want to save people. They'd rather just crawl away in a little corner or go wandering around whatever nomadic journey they want to go on, trying to find themselves, find their purpose in life, find whatever role they feel they have to. It's kind of a bit depressing when you watch these classic heroes, as you did growing up, and this is the current version of them. So, with James Bond, I just hope after this film we can get back to that classic, more inspirational James Bond figure that I think is more appropriate for the character. But this trailer itself, it the Super Bowl version just backed up really what we saw more of the initial first trailer, which I think came out was a month ago, 2 months ago. So didn't reveal anything more, but I don't think it has to really. I think from what we've got, I don't think we really need to see any more details. Everything looks, high class, high quality. All the locations and the action sequences and the stunt work, it all looks first class, like top notch. It's what you expect. I read somewhere the budget on this movie is about 250 million. So it best makes some money, which they generally do. I mean, I know Skyfall made over 1 billion. I think maybe like 1.2 billion worldwide. Spectre, I know maybe that hasn't been revered as well after the years. That still made what 880 or 890 odd. So box office wise, Daniel Craig has been very prolific for the series, and I think No Time to Die will continue in that trend. So that's always good, to have James Bond prominent in the sort of cinematic landscape that we're in. But after this movie, let's just get back to the vodka martinis and the locations and the sexy women, and that. Let's get back to that sort of concept of James Bond if we can. But those are my overall thoughts on this Super Bowl trailer. Let me know what you think. Are you happy with it? Do you think it's too similar in tone to what you've seen before and you're not as enthusiastic about it? Are you like me? Do you want to have this be Daniel Craig's last turn and go back to the more sort of your Pierce Brosnan, your Sean Connery, Roger Moore type of character? Are you somebody who would like to see Natasha Lynch in her own spin-off as a double O agent? Do you think it was right that a female James Bond should replace the original character or not? So let me know in the comments below. And again, as usual, I'll keep generating these videos, just starting up the channel, but I will keep putting out these reviews and previews and coverage, and hopefully over time I'll get more used to the style and my style of video commentating, if you like, and we'll push on from there. But this Super Bowl TV spot for James Bond, yeah, promising just like the trailer. So let me know what you think, and more reviews coming soon, and take care of yourselves. See ya.